Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. Our broadcast today features a conversation recorded in front of a live audience, and it featured four financial services executives. They were Citizens Bank Chief Information Officer and Head of Technology Services, Michael Ruttledge, Comerica Bank Chief Operations and Technology Officer, Megan Crespi, Ally Bank Chief Information, Data, and Digital Officer, Sathish, and Truist Chief Information Officer, Scott Case. Each provided a lens into innovation being driven in their companies. I hope you enjoy this conversation. So during the past couple of years, one of the industries that's been most dynamic and most innovative and been both pushed to as well as driven a tremendous amount of change has been the financial services industry. It's been remarkable to witness as customers, as friends and collaborators of people in the industry. And I'm so grateful for the leaders who've joined today to talk a bit about their own experiences during these dynamic times. You know, there have been remarkable changes to customer expectations and a focus on customer experience in some new ways has been an emphasis certainly across the industry. Omnichannel approaches and meeting customers where they wish to be met has become sacrosanct as well. Of course, this is an industry that also has helped businesses and individuals during very trying times, as of course, these have been very difficult times for so many in our country and around the world as well. And these are leaders who, of course, have fostered and facilitated a lot of the aid towards those in need. Data certainly is a strategic weapon in this industry as much as any, and very much looking forward to understanding the ways in which data has been harnessed in some really creative and important ways across the stories we'll tell today. The war for talent, I mean, this is something that impacts, of course, all industries. But I've been inspired by the stories that multiple of the executives here have told me in terms of some of the tactics that they have used in order to invest in people and keep the best people within their organizations. That's obviously the most important first step in the war for talent, is to keep the great talent you already have. Diversity, equity, and inclusion has rightfully had renewed emphasis across the past couple of years. And again, there's some good stories to tell here as well. These are just a few of the trends and interesting topics, at least to my mind, that we'll cover through this conversation. And again, I'm so grateful for the leaders who've joined me today. Welcome to all of you, and thank you again so much for taking time for this conversation today. You know, maybe Michael, I'll begin with you. Michael Ruttledge, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the Chief Information Officer and Head of Technology Services at Citizens Financial. He's joining from Rhode Island today. Michael, great to see you. Thank you so much for taking time. I mentioned the importance of people. You know, this is, as I've now gotten out and about in recent months to gather over intimate dinners in a variety of cities across the country and facilitated conversations with a lot of folks, yourself included, in Boston not so long ago. This is one of those topics: the war for talent, the implications of the Great Resignation, as some call it. You know, people are, of course, our most important assets, and keeping our best people is such an important thing during these times. And one of the stories that has been very inspiring for me is this remarkable in-house engineering academy that you have built. As I presumably both from the perspective of investing in your people and making that very clear, but obviously, of course, the fruit of that being building the skills of tomorrow and creating a team that is ready to seize the opportunities of tomorrow as well. Can you talk a little bit about the construct of that and some of the topics that you've included in the in-house engineering academy?
Absolutely, Peter, and thanks for the question. Yeah, certainly, workforce transformation has been a key part of our journey at Citizens to really introduce the next generation of technology, and really we have a sort of two-pronged approach. As you talked about, one is frankly, training and reskilling our existing technologists, and secondly, embarking on a pretty significant hiring program, and then marrying the two, so you have that subject matter expertise of the applications, but at the same time, you're bringing in people who are familiar with where we're moving to in terms of the technology. So let me start with the upskilling program. We introduced what we call engineering academies. And these were hands-on coding academies, 9 weeks. The first week was university learning, if you like. But the next 9 weeks was where they built code. And in fact, some of that code is now in production, right? They used, we like to say that we drank our own champagne, right? They used the DevSecOps pipeline. They used some of the new database technologies. They used automated testing. And through that program, they come out practitioners. Now, this could have been mainframe programmers who in our legacy systems wanted to transition into the distributed world. It could have been engineers who had computer science degrees, frankly, but hadn't really used that muscle. We've really been pivoting away from a largely vendor, contractor-based talent pool to leverage much more in-house engineering talent. And coupled with that, our colleagues have taken over 600 different badges across 38 different disciplines, ranging from the cloud to APIs and microservices, to the data lake, to testing, et cetera, which has also been really well received by our team. Secondly, when it comes to hiring, we've hired over 500 architecture, infrastructure, and software engineers over the last 2.5 years. These are all colleagues. And a large piece of that success would be from referrals. So the fact that 33% of those hires have been internal referrals. As we started that hiring, started at the leadership level, hiring, frankly, leaders that can code. People like Sathish Christian, who's on the call with me today, right? He can roll up his sleeves, he can code. So that's where we started from, and then we really focused on our diversity of hiring as well. We've actually hired 33% female hires and actually over 80% people of color. And we did that by, we pivoted from our traditional, frankly, New England schools. We still hire from them, they're critical to our success, but we broadened it and started hiring from Atlanta and different schools around the country, from schools in Florida, from schools in Arizona, et cetera, et cetera. And we partnered also with some boutique engineering companies who actually take people from non-traditional backgrounds, assess them with that they have the computer aptitude, and then they put them through 16-week boot camps themselves, and then they're placed on our account. And we've found through that we're able to attract much more diverse workforce, which has been really exciting for us.
That's extraordinary stories. I really appreciate you sharing those, Michael. And I want to actually bring Megan into the conversation as well. Megan, you are someone who is also at Comerica, put a lot of thought into the second point that Michael raises, the DE&I, and thinking about bringing in much more diverse talent than has traditionally been the norm within IT organizations. Talk a bit about some of the methods that you have used, if you don't mind, in order to accomplish some of those important feats as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me today. I can't overemphasize everything that Michael just said. Really critical to offer the kinds of upskilling, reskilling programs for your existing staff. It keeps people energized. It keeps people focused on the future. We call that future-ready talent. We talk about drinking our own Kool-Aid. I think I'd like to up that a little bit to drinking our own champagne, as Michael described. So that's a new idea for me. But really the idea of taking the people who have the talent that brought us here to this point in our 173-year heritage here at Comerica Bank, and thinking about that next chapter in the evolution, marrying that up with a combination of folks from the outside. These would be people who have done it elsewhere, who may know what good looks like on some of the things that we aspire to do more of in the future, who can help us accelerate a bit. And then it's also finding new pipelines of talent. I mean, I think we would all agree, cross industry, frankly, this isn't just financial services, and it's not even just tech, right? With the Great Resignation, now called the Great Reshuffling, whatever you might want to call it, the reality is there just isn't enough talent ready today to fill all of the demands that this evolution of customer expectations is really driving. So, for us, it's about expanding those talent pipelines, thinking differently about where we seek talent. So certainly the on-campus programs and expanding the reach there, partnerships with HBCUs, community colleges in the markets that we serve, and so on. But it's also thinking about diversity. You mentioned DE&I earlier. Certainly at the heart of kind of our core values here at Comerica is diversity. Thinking about ways to improve the way we think about reaching out to latent talent in the marketplace. What I mean by that is partnerships here in Metro Detroit, where I am, the Exceptional Academy, which really focuses on providing certifications in Cisco products, for example, and in some other kind of technologies for entry-level cybersecurity types of roles for differently kind of neurodiverse and differently abled candidates. We've had a great partnership there, and it's just beginning, but we've really enjoyed kind of both the mentoring that we've been able to do, as well as seeking that pipeline of talent, both for our internships and early talent programs, as well as for permanent positions. Step It Up America is another one that we have a partnership with. You may not be familiar with that one, Peter, you may, but that's around veterans, people who have served in our military, serving in, again, entry-level roles, developing exposure to cybersecurity principles, as well as to technology through skilling programs, and then on-the-job training that we can provide as part of that partnership. So those might be some examples of things that we're thinking about to really expand that pool.
That's great. Thank you both for the overview of all you're doing, but also the specifics of organizations that you're partnering with to bring that to life, Megan. That's really great. Sathish, I'd like to turn to you, if I may. So as I mentioned before, you are the Chief Information, Data, and Digital Officer of Ally. And yours is an institution that, though not born digital, this is the old GMAC, in rebranding and going through its transition, has really emphasized being a digital first bank. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the steps that have been undertaken during your tenure, even prior to your tenure, to bring that to life, this whole sort of burning of the ships moment of representing and demonstrating for folks that the future is digital. How do you bring that to life in an institution that was born prior to the digital age?
Yeah, what a fantastic question. Thank you, Peter. And it's phenomenal to see some of the familiar faces here and the leaders and the journey that they're taking on. It is what I call two conflicting forces pulling you on opposite sides to satisfy what you just asked. While we have greater than 100-year heritage, the bank was born digitally, and it was born as a deposits arm to our 100-year-old auto loan and the dealer relationship business. But what we had to do was quickly make sure that we started to expand on what was born as a deposit engine because of the customer satisfaction that we started to obtain. And we had over 95%, and we continue to have over 95% retention rate with our customers. We had 90% satisfaction rate from our customers who are calling in to get us to do something. But all of that was more of an analog interaction. How do you convert that to digital? And that's why I said, while we were focused on human-centered service, we were focused on customer obsession, we had to quickly pivot into this engine that was born as deposit and expanded to high growth business, whether it was your transaction account, whether it was mortgage, whether it was insurance, auto loans, point of sale lending, and now adding credit card to it. And as we started to expand, we had to introduce technology, and almost technology had to lead the vision of how customers would be served in the digital environment. And I'll give you one quick example of how we did that. Our bot, which did not have a proper name, we called it Ally Assist instead of giving it a single name, to expose to customers that you are actually interacting with a bot, but we are going to try our best to make sure that we're replicating the service that 90% of you thought was great. And we focused on what we called high value and high velocity interactions, and which was our 6% of the intents. And we converted those to bot interaction end to end we reached an industry-leading 60% containment. And what that did was it reproduced that interaction, but in a way it was convenient for our customers to interact with us anytime they chose to interact with us. And it also unleashed capacity with our customer care reps to focus on more complicated problems. And what that did was 95% of the interactions after we started expanding the intents, we started with 6, now we are up to 22% intents. We saw 95% of our customers interact with us digitally as we started rolling out those capabilities. And part of maturing this process also to ensure that we don't go back to our old ways of doing things and constantly remind and challenge us that customers need flexibility in terms of when they communicate with us, and they need simplicity in terms of how we roll out those capabilities. So we constantly read the voice of consumer and make sure we take that into account as we roll out new digital capabilities.
Great overview. I want to stick with you for just a moment longer, if I may, Sathish. Several of the executives here certainly have data under their purview. You have it in your title as well as the Chief Information Data and Digital Officer at Ally. Talk a bit about your data program. This is an area of tremendous emphasis, not only in this industry, across industries, as we have an opportunity to poll a lot of your peers across major institutions and enterprises. This continues to be among the top, if not the top topic in its various variations, across the executives that we poll. Talk a bit about, if you can give a thumbnail sketch to a very complex topic, admittedly, some of the ways in which you're contemplating leveraging data as a differentiating factor.
As you yourself have captured astutely and observed, Peter, data is making a comeback. It started off with big data. People started creating these large lakes, bringing all the data together, and found out how complicated and how disorganized soon it might become before you capture value for all the data that is centralized. So what we did was we sort of flipped the funnel and we said, let's capture the use cases that are required for the businesses that is going to add maximum value and create return on investment within 1 year. So I can go and ask for money. So when we flip that chart of, let me start with the use case and let's figure out what capabilities are required for those use case and what data is required to be centrally collected for that use case, it challenged all of us. And it forced us into prioritization. And in some cases, it also led us to figure out what is the simplest use case that we can implement to prove this out. And of the 160 or so use cases that were first initially targeted to centralize all the data that is required for it, we mapped it to just the 5 use cases and the 5 or 6 capabilities that are required and the essential tool set required to unleash that use case, and then the data. What it did was it helped us build muscle to move fast, show value, and capture value for across businesses and functions. And it became easier for us to tell the story. Once you showed them a success of 1 or 2 use cases, we created this pull factor across the organization instead of the push factor. And people started talking about how successful it was. And that, in a nutshell, without going into the details, is how we are exploring our data strategy and finding success with it.
That's great. Thank you for that overview, Sathish. Scott Case, I'd like to turn to you. You are the Chief Information Officer of Truist and have been from the beginning of the formation of that company, which was forged through the merger of equals, bringing BB&T and SunTrust operations together. That happened in late 2019, and thus just before the pandemic. And I can only imagine the complexity of managing that integration of 2 major organizations during a time where, at least for large stretches, you weren't able to be together in person. Certainly that would have been the optimal scenario and the expected scenario during prior times. Talk a bit about how you led that integration at a time when physical proximity wasn't possible.
Peter, hey, thank you. It's good to be here, and thanks for the invitation today. Yeah, so to your point, our timing, I'm not sure if it was good or not, but we announced the merger right before the pandemic announced itself. And, I think the good news is that our teams collectively, even prior to the pandemic, were, used to working virtually. Obviously, in the technology and operations world, that's not a abnormal thing. I think there were some key aspects, though, for us to begin the journey on the merger as the pandemic hit. I'd say the most important thing was we grounded really quickly on Our purpose is, forming a new company, Truist. We were able to declare a new purpose, bringing two companies together to inspire and build better lives and communities. That was definitely a rallying cry for all of our teammates that really, I think, helped us persevere through the pandemic, especially the early stages. We like many of my colleagues on the call today, we all pivoted hard to enable new ways of working, exploring different platforms and technologies to allow for collaboration on a virtual level. And also, I think the other thing we did really well early on is we were clear about prioritizing the merger was the most important thing. But as I think you even alluded to earlier, within 30 days of the pandemic really taking hold, we were also, as an industry, working hard to support clients through the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. So, every time we had a challenge, we sort of doubled down on purpose, client experience, client focus. And at the same time, we also were enabling our business partners to work differently. We moved, I think, roughly 2/3 of our company into a virtual work mode almost overnight. But again, I don't think that's unique to Truist. I think that's every one of my colleagues I've talked to had a similar experience. So, I think it's through a use of purpose-defined culture, client experience at the forefront, and then good technology solutions through those enabling capabilities and that kind of cultural focus. We really, I think that helped us persevere.
And speaking of culture, you really focused a lot on developing a culture of innovation. And I mean, think about the complexities of the cultural elements of what you've led, bringing people together who, by definition, were two different cultures, trying to forge a single culture that leverages the strengths of each. And in so doing, on top of that, fostering a culture of innovation that no doubt in its own way was in each of those organizations previously. So not necessarily bringing it up from its nascent stages, but talk a bit about how you did just that.
Yeah, again, I'll focus on a few things that are more of our mindset. I'll start there, and then I'll reference a physical space that we've built out that sort of, I think, are something we want to talk about on a go-forward basis for Truist, called our Innovation and Technology Center. I think from a mindset standpoint, philosophically, again, we started with purpose, creating a new company through this merger, leveraging all the great prior work done for both heritage companies, very mission-focused, purpose-oriented companies already. We declared an intent to be focused on really three things, and it kind of boiled down into a really simple formula. And those three things are touch plus technology equals trust. So we internally kind of reference that as our T3 strategy. I think that when you dive into what does it actually mean day to day for our teammates and hopefully for our clients, it's all about design-centered client experience type thinking, right? So we really have taken our purpose, our T3 strategy, and started to develop new ways of working with business partners, with technologists, with operations, with functional partners, all collaborating through a new framework that we've created to do really design thinking, to do more research, client experience oriented research. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we've had an incredible opportunity through this merger to build out, actually in our corporate headquarters in Charlotte, new space, which we've called the Innovation and Technology Center, where within this space, we get to practice every day, research, design thinking, things that, again, most of my colleagues on this call would be familiar with, but journey rooms, as an expression to bring together cross-functional teams, put the client physically and virtually in the center of that room, so to speak, and then build and engineer solutions that meet their expectations and needs. So we've really gone from philosophical cultural statements early on in our merger experience all the way down to a couple 100,000-foot physical expression of an innovation and technology center that, candidly, we don't want to stop there either. We intend to export that experience and culture of innovation across the whole company. But physically, that's been a pretty cool start to our journey as Truist to have that physical space to kind of anchor on.
I really appreciate that overview, Scott. Michael, I'd like to go back to you, if I may. We've begun to talk about in a variety of different parts of the conversation, customer experience and expectations that are continuing to change among customers of the financial services industry. And you've noted in our past conversations the necessity to think of automation as a key to delivering frictionless experience for customers. Talk a bit about some of the methods you've used to bring that to life and the fruit of that, if you will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great question. Thank you, Peter. I think, listen, the pandemic fueled this unprecedented migration to digital channels, right? That we've all seen. At the same time, when you look at our strategy, we still think it's important for physical experiences in the banks. But what we want to move to is more advice-based in the banks, in the actual physical branches, and more self-service capabilities, online, so that we can free up that time for people to focus on that advice. And really, that's led us to really think through how can we leverage AI to really reduce those assisted transactions, to deliver more self-service capabilities, deploy more automation in the back office, allow more straight-through processing, so our colleagues don't have to deal with that. And then we're repositioning the sort of physical network to serve customers with advice. And we're also leveraging AI there as well. So, we built this system called Checkup, where people can go in and they can make an appointment at the branch, but we use insights before they get to the branch to figure out, well, what they're really interested in and what maybe other offers from their primary relationships can we talk to them about to really serve them better. So, that's allowing us to really grow our digital sales. In fact, last year we grew our digital sales by over 40%. And drive more self-service through our mobile app and leverages AI-driven insights to really help the customers really save and spend more in an informed way.
And were there some surprises as to the rapidity of adoption of self-service? I mean, yours as an industry, generally speaking, of course, still has physical branches, still has a very much a in-person component. Should that be the way in which a customer wishes to interact with the bank? Were you surprised by how quickly those solutions were adopted and the range of ages and types of clients who are willing to do so?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think during the pandemic, the amount of people obviously walking into the branches really significantly decreased, and we had a very strong adoption of digital. But since then, it's come back, and people are coming into branches. In fact, even younger consumers, still prefer to go into a branch, as we've surveyed them, to open an account, right? So I think it's important to have certainly have both in your arsenal. It certainly is, from our perspective. But I think giving them mobile insights keeps customers coming back, right? They're interested in that. It really serves a different audience, and we've definitely seen that. And to your point, we certainly saw some pretty rapid adoption in that, and not only in the retail space, but in the commercial space as well. You think, bankers weren't traveling to go meet clients, right? No one was traveling, so everything moved digitally, and or everything moved to WebEx, and there was certainly really fast adoption of that, similar to the type of things that Scott talked about in his remarks.
Speaking of customer expectations and meeting them, Megan, I love the phrase that you use, or the term that you use. You've spoken about Amazoning customer expectations in financial services. Talk a bit about what you mean by that, and also some of the unusual partnerships I know that you've put together in order to deliver against that.
Yeah, I just laugh because it's a less eloquent way of describing what all of my my peers here on the panel today have articulated so well, but really just this idea of kind of the barriers to digital adoption that dissolved during the pandemic. And the fact that as people became more conversant with, using their phones to do every last thing, you use Amazon. You don't need to be trained. Within a few clicks, the thing you just thought of, you've ordered. The payment is, integrated right there. And if you're lucky, in some markets, it arrives on your doorstep within hours. We would never have imagined that even probably 36 months ago, let alone 5 years ago. And so, as customers of all demographics, to using kind of their phones and using online means for transactional things and understanding the convenience that that brings, it's changed people's inherent perceptions of how long anything should take, how easy anything should be. The convenience factor to them of meeting them where they are, in my view, has really ramped up. The same time, really to Michael's points, where you need specialized advice, where you need guidance, where you're making a big purchasing decision, where you don't, you're starting a small business, you're doing your first mortgage. You want more of that human interaction that can be delivered digitally, through formats like this, right? Embedding video into your online capabilities, or physically in a more one-to-one branch setting. But this whole idea of thinking about the customer experience through the lens of all of the kinds of experiences our customers of today and tomorrow, our target customers, are having cross-industry with all of the things that they're doing is sort of where it's at.
I love that example that casts the net more widely than just your traditional competitive set to draw inspiration. After all, the people who are using Amazon are customers of yours, and the residue of the experience of what works well certainly colors the way in which they think about all experiences in some way or another. What a great insight, Megan. Thank you so much for that. I wanted to also just stay with you for a moment longer, if I may. As others have mentioned as well, there's now an omni-channel approach, has been for some time, but the complexion of that and the extent to which people are delving into different parts, different channels, and even mixing and matching as they go through their own journey is of interest. Talk a bit about how you have plotted these customer journeys across the different potential points of interaction, to your point, to make sure that you are meeting your customers where they wish to be met, as opposed to dictating to them that they must meet you, as you prefer.
Yeah, it's really hard work, right? And it's tough to get it perfect. But again, from our experiences as customers of many different platforms and many different types of businesses, we know that it's frustrating to have to explain to yet another person what you've just gone through, right? Or who you are, or what your address is, and to repeat information and so on. And so, we understand that and are trying to take that on by ensuring that our data supports this sort of omni-channel, opti-channel approach to customer service. And I think some of my peers have talked about this already, and you even mentioned, Peter, in your initial comments, I wrote it down. Data as a strategic weapon. How you take data of what you know about your customers, both in terms of background and situation, but also transactionally, to present to them a unified front, cross-channel, cross-product, cross-service, not really exposing your org chart to your customer, right? Oh, you happen to have a mortgage with us, but you also happen to be a wealth management client. We need to know that by ensuring that our data is of high quality, that it's available to all within our company on this side of the fence to make sure that the optimal customer experience is achieved. Tougher to do than what I've just described, but data is the key to that.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you again for those insights, Megan. I want to go back to you, Scott, if I may. In preparing for our conversation today, I was fascinated to learn more about what you refer to as the digital straddle that you've developed as a significant part of your strategy, your digital and technology strategy. Describe what you mean by that and the value you anticipate driving from it.
Yeah, so the digital straddle term was born out of our need for the merger and during the merger activity, which took us net over a couple of years from sort of start to finish. We chose to or wanted to have the ability to roll out our online banking mobile capabilities, to be specific, in batches and in waves to our clients, versus number one, making our clients wait for the end of the conversion when we got to target state systems to then allow for them to tap into the new platforms. So the Straddle is really our internal name for our capability. We devise, we leverage some partnerships, et cetera. And it's essentially a cloud API type framework that we built. And the essence of it is it allowed us to dip into each of our heritage or legacy banking platforms, our core systems, and bring back through that type of architecture and platform the presentation of their data in real time, current transactions, et cetera, through the new digital wrapper, if you will. So it was really also a tool not just for us to allow for client experience to start to happen during the merger and not wait for a big bang at the end, but candidly is a way to de-risk some of the merger, right? To allow our clients to start to see the new brand, have new experiences, transact in a Truist client experience designed way, versus waiting till core backend systems convert further on in the merger. So it was for both of those reasons, Peter, we designed the Straddle. You know, we're pursuing patents, all that good stuff. So it's been exciting for our teams to see some real innovation applied for the purpose of the merger, purposely or intentionally for client experience and from a risk management perspective come to fruition.
I love the duality of that. Thank you for sharing that, Scott, and the implications you have both internally and externally, opportunity, risk mitigation, the many different opportunities that serves. Look, as I reflect on this really inspiring conversation, I can't help but thinking, you know, I've been working with people who run technology and digital for more than 25 years now, and it seems like for so much of that period, there was pontificators saying this was a role that was going to go away: CIO, CDO, CTO. And as we talk about now the various places that great leaders like the ones who've joined me today influence customer experience, developing omnichannels and a multiple channel approach in which to interact with customers in the ways that they wish to interact best. Thinking about the technological lens, the digital lens that is so critically important in helping people, customers at their most critical points of need. The extent to which they are at the fulcrum point for their institutions and helping bring better learning and recruiting and better people into the fold as well. Just among a few things that we've spoken about across this great conversation. Is there a better time to be a technology and digital leader? I don't think so, as this becomes more strategic, more critical to the way in which businesses do business. I hope you've drawn as much inspiration from this conversation as I have. With that, I want to give my sincere thanks to Michael Ruttledge, Megan Crespi, Scott Case, Sathish Muthukrishnan. Thank you all so much for joining me today and for the great insights that you shared. And thank you all for joining us and listening into this conversation. All the best to you all.